G'day guys, welcome to this week's weekly developer update. Joe, once again, having you on board to discuss what's going on in the week. I had a nice question asked to me in the AMA this week, and it was actually along the lines of what I would like to see developed in the ecosystem. I'll probably sort of relate that question to you. What do you think? What are your thoughts on that?
Oh, that's a big question. Let's start from kind of first principles, okay? So there are two things that are important to understand about Ergo. The first has to do with this concept of composability, right? When you build things that are open source and they're composable, a simple analogy of that would be Legos, right? You get a unique piece that you can potentially plug into other pieces and over time build greater complexity. And I think that we're still in the early stages of building Legos, right? And as we build like more complex contracts, we'll be able to plug these things together and build more complex financial structures and tools, right? Yeah. The second, is kind of this concept of like a finite state machine, right? And basically, if you look at how extended UTXO works in terms of building smart contracts, it's like you're building a very specific machine for a very specific purpose, right? So like on a high level, if you were to say, oh, what are you most excited about in terms of applications? That's a big question. I would say that there's a progression that I think will naturally happen. I think one of the lowest hanging fruits that would be a super useful finite state machine or Lego to figure out would be this concept of royalties enforced on chain. Yep. Okay. And, that as a first step, it has some use cases in terms of NFTs. It has some use cases in terms of, I guess potentially other applications. But, I think the step beyond that is going to be distributed royalties, right? And then things start getting interesting because you get into more complex financial products and say, okay, well, if you have the ability to collectively distribute fees, if you have the ability to, let's say, build additional complexity in DeFi with that concept of some type of fee or royalty that's enforced on chain and then paid out to multiple parties, things get really interesting. Yeah. We do exist in a space where one of the more popular models is let's create a token, right? And sometimes I think it's fair to ask, does this token need to exist? Yeah. Right? And in a way, personally, this is my personal opinion, I think that when you get into this concept of fee distribution, things get a lot more interesting from like the side of financial products, because then you have the ability to say, okay, well, what is the payout threshold? And naturally that gets you some kind of futures market, and it gives you the ability to speculate on what that future distribution will be, as well as the value of ERG. And then you start getting into more complex financial products that mimic things that exist in the real world. Yeah, so I personally, that excites me because it kind of gets away from net speculation and gets more into use, utility, and I don't know, I think you just get a stronger DeFi ecosystem with that in mind. A lot of DeFi in the last cycle had to do with token emission and then usually debasement, if we're honest. Yep. Where like the inflation was too high and then it debased its own value. Well, UTXO, because you have the ability to pay from one to many, really opens up, in my opinion, revolutionary products once we get distributed fee distribution that's enforced on chain as a Lego.
Yep. Yeah, so, and it can be plugged into many different sort of things. I think we've got, like, say, for instance, we've got the headless DApp sort of scenario where you could have multiple UIs and the fees that are sort of accumulated on the back end, they could be distributed to multiple UIs or multiple use cases there, I could probably think. But it's interesting also having that futures market tie into options and all kinds of bits and pieces into the future. It's one thing that I'm excited about is basically the realization of the power of UTXO. We're still sort of just in, like you said, in that initial building block, that the accumulation of the Legos is a matter of sort of figuring out all the pieces and then sort of start plugging them all in together, because ultimately having that one to many or many to one, or that's both sort of scenarios in that respect, it opens up so many different possibilities. And the fee structure, it allows for this to happen as well. There's no gas involved or anything like that. So I think we're set up pretty nicely in that respect to see anything or the new DeFi primitives come to life.
Yeah, you could look at MetaMask is a really good example, right? Basically, as a company, all they've done is put in some minor use fee, right? And so they're scraping a little bit every time that somebody trades with it. But if you look at like their performance last year, that was one of the most profitable applications in crypto.
Yeah, it was,
and they have no token. But then it's a matter of saying, okay, well, what if we could build a model to where the ownership and development and consensus around how that project develops is distributed, and so are the fees.
Yeah.
That would be interesting to me.
Yeah, exactly. I think it was off the top of my head, it was up around 400 or 450 million, something along those lines, accumulated over that 12 months. So that's a significant amount of money for just taking a small sum or small fee for each transaction. It's think about the distribution there for the user base and everything that sort of can tie into that. But then also, that's just one scenario. Think about how many other sort of scenarios that could be alive in the ecosystem.
Yeah, if personally, I think that's a much more stable ecosystem and economy to build versus inflation and speculation based.
Yeah,
that's me personally. So take that as a grain of salt. But in terms of like what primitives would I like to see, I think the first step is just royalties enforced on chain.
Yep.
And then naturally fee distribution is going to be some extension of that, or something that's plugged in on top of it. We'll see. Yeah,
definitely. One thing that I'm excited about is actually seeing some of the frameworks that the EF have put together and all that sort of stuff come to life. I know like Oracle's V2 is in active development at the moment, and hopefully we see that come to life for Dexy, having a gold Oracle there. But just to keep in mind that Ergo is not an Oracle data provider. The EF's provided the framework there for people to be able to spin up multiple Oracle pools and basically build a business around that framework. So people can, that's one thing I'd like to see is people jump into all these frameworks and start utilizing across the board, because there's multiple there, and it's just a matter of someone sort of just grabbing it by the horns and running with it.
Yeah, we'd like to build Legos. We don't like to monetize them.
Yep.
Open source Legos. That's what the EF does. And so hopefully people can take those tools and build businesses with them, build applications, build real world use cases that deliver value.
Yep. Very well said. And speaking of the development front, let's jump into this week's developer update.
Sure.
So kicking things off, we have an early update from Chris from Exle. You want to take that one, mate?
Sure. So it looks like he's going to be busy at the time, so he dropped it early. Looks like with Excel, the UI is a table and a few screens away from being finished. That's great to hear. Crowdfunding design is complete and will be the next iteration to be worked on after SLT. On the social side of our development, the Q&T team in Kukama, Kenya, has completed all the paperwork and signed to become a legal entity as a cooperative, so they can have a larger impact on the region interacting with the Excel platform. And the other opportunity Q&T has opened up, this could be A big first for the Ergo ecosystem, as an organization has formed that will be able to utilize the microfinance opportunities that Exle team is hoping will materialize as the platform goes live. By forming a cooperative, those involved can leverage their legal identity as a cooperative to give leaders a high assurance of repayment. They are now waiting for their official certificate. So that's actually pretty huge in terms of microfinance. Chris Ray, Exle, we Q&T team have had boots on the ground in Kenya. I've been, having weekly meetings. I've actually been at a couple of them. It's been a pleasure. They're serious. They want to build this out and actually do some good in the world. I respect that a lot.
Yeah, it's awesome to see, because ultimately the updates that have been provided, the videos, the training sessions, we actually had some loans being lent out, some money lent out, and actually had, I believe it's one or two have actually been repaid. So it's fantastic to see this all come to life also, and in an official sort of sense, with legal entities on the ground now, sort of formalizing the whole sort of aspect there and seeing real world adoption and use case of the blockchain and the Chris's product that he's put together, or Chris and his team have put together. It's fantastic.
Yeah, he came in and said, I'm going to do micro loans, and he wasn't playing around.
Yep, exactly right. And next up, we have another early update from Luivatra. So just on the Paideia side, the Web 2.0 demo is being used and abused. And as expected, a bunch of the bugs have been found and come to surface. Been working hard to fix them, along with opening up other tokens to make their own DAO. So it's no longer Paideia only. And then the smart contract work is going well. The process for the DAO creation's been made, including the bot code. During this process, a configuration check is done by the DAO creation. Fees are sent to the Paideia treasury, and the profits sharing side of things. Multiple tokens are minted that are used in the Paideia system. So next up, they're bringing the staking code up to par, since some of the changes in the setup have been made since he last worked on that. And once the staking is connected to the governance side, they can start working on what it's all about. So voting, proposals, actions, resulting, past proposals, etc. Fantastic. There's a little schema there also. Next up, we have MrStahlfelge.
All right, so it looks like on the Appkit, they've added some of the new node mempool endpoints, PRs in review, implemented methods to handle spent boxes more conveniently. That PR is in review. On the wallet app, looks like 2.1.2219 with some mosaic improvements is now available on Terminus test flight and in a staged rollout to all the Google Play users. Completed version 2.2 address book, that PR is now in review. And began working on the next iteration. Currently implementing cold wallet support for ErgoAuth. Extended the ErgoAuth EIP 28 PR with the interchange format. Speaking about ErgoAuth, EIP 28 is kind of stuck, although it is already in use by products like this one. We have a lot more EIPs that are unapproved, although already used. Maybe someone can take a look at the EIP repo again to get some hanging EIPs merged if there's no important concerns. For this, actual users could comment as well. So yeah, we always encourage user feedback, developer feedback on EIPs. I'm sure sometimes we get a little bit buried and probably could do a little bit better in terms of managing like pulling them in, but hopefully that gets merged soon.
Yeah, it'd be good to watch. Obviously, a little bit sort of lacking there, and Alex has addressed it also. He's made mention that he wants to sort of get in there and start tidying up a lot of the ERPs. So watch this space. Next up, we have a little update from Glasgow. But thanks to the tip from MrStahlfelge, he's compiled a lot of the chats, and they're now visible and indexed on linen.dev. So you can jump on there and check those out. He's also spent a bit of time reorganizing and rewriting some of the docs.ergo.platform articles. So it's structured a lot better now and loaded a lot more information on there. There's a new channel for discussing education. That's bridged to Telegram also. So any comments and tips on how to improve it further, any other ideas relating to education, let us know. And next up, we have Morphic.
All right. Looks like on the Sigma side, there was a critical deserialization bug that was discovered in Node 5.0. Looks like that has been tested, reported, and I know that Alex was working on patching that. Looks like Sigma version 5.0.1 has been released and published on Sonatype. Got rid of Java reflection in Sigma with all tests passing. Separated consensus critical code of Sigma interpreter from Ergo script compiler, which is not used in TX or transaction validation. Finished the initial setup of Java or Scala.js cross compilation in Sigma. Imported Sigma.js crypto facade into Scala on the Appkit. Looks like he reviewed 2 pull requests from MrStahlfelge, miscellaneous. He's been active on Discord, and looks like next on the menu is going to be finishing Sigma.js.
Always busy.
Always busy.
And next up, we have pragmaxim and some updates on the node development side. So there's a performance improvement in the wallet API. Unspent boxes are scanning by inclusion height now. Solved conflict between missing endpoints and resources. Now working on a timeout issue when sending a transaction. And besides that, just doing a lot of evaluations of some database engines suitable for embedding that are efficient, well maintained, and have the flexibility for querying possibilities. And next up, we have Captain Nemo.
Looks like Fleet has been the main focus. Working and discussing on high-level packages structure. Work in progress is adding basic constant serialization to the Fleet SDK core.
The short and sweet one from Captain Nemo this week. And next we have greenhat and his team. So Tim L has hunted down a nasty bug in the Rust Sigma protocol prover implementation. So it's a bottom-up versus a top-down tree traversal, and has provided a fix. And greenhat himself has fixed 5 more issues while running 2 oracles. Started writing the oracle command guide for how-tos and for the operators. Helped Tim L with the prover fix and added a check for polynomial in at least construction. And the 2 oracles he's had have been humming on the testnet for a couple of days without any issues. So data point publishing is working fine, and we'll start the next test of voting and updating the running oracle pool soon. It's good to see. And then after that, V2.0 alpha milestone will be completed, and we're starting the next stage. So V2.0 beta open testing on the testnet. And then current progress towards the release is tracked in the roadmap. You can jump on to the GitHub there and check that one out. And next we have short update from Satergo.
All right, so it looks like their design beta 2 was released. Looks like the new project, Stratum for Ergo, which is both a library and tool to create solo mining pool server, will be integrated into Satergo wallet as well. I know that's huge. There's a lot of solo miners out there that are, let's just say, running on a tight budget at the moment, and the ability to potentially eliminate fees and mine solo is a pretty big incentive.
Yeah, streamlining that whole process and just being able to have it in a full node wallet, having that option there to mine to that with a Stratum and everything built in, that's fantastic. Nice little utility there. And next we have Alex. So Kushti's working on the protocol reference client update and development. So he's released node version 4.0.105. with a lot of fixes and optimizations. So if you ran an exchange or a node with a lot of custom scans, please take a look at the release notes of that version. Also in this version, the proper BIP 32C derivation. Tricky tongue twister.
So my tongue earlier.
With probability of 1 to 256 is being fixed. So please check the release notes if after the wallet restoration, a wallet address is changed. On 5.0 side, so 5.0.0 was being released. There was a couple of breaking changes in the serialization, as mentioned earlier, were revealed. Spent some time on auditing the serialization changes and discovered additional problems. And then finally, 5.0.1 with the fixes has been released. I reviewed a lot of PRs, including a huge one by Fanta, including 4 PRs changes that requested, and this made them to pass on. Next, looking into issue 1884 and 1885. Not too sure what they're in relation to. Then in other matters, he's reviewed the babel fee contracts once again, and it seems the final submission that was put forward by LGD looks good. And so let's discuss the finalization of the babel fee EIP. Reviewing the Dexy contracts. Spent Saturday with Bruno from the Jet Alliance, discussing different topics, including a possible SIG USD update, assessing the different options there, and updated decentralized grid contracts. So now the tuple's been eliminated, and we'll publish updated contracts soon. And then just on the off-chain part, there's refund functionality has been completed and matching's nearly done. So going to test everything shortly. Speaking of a busy man. Yeah,
always.
There's just a couple of comments here between Nemo and Morphic. Just a small little update from BlitzTCG. So they're officially going dual chain to Cardano. Don't think any other game has tried something like that. So all the best. Non-BRs reviewed some babel fee contracts from Nitrum. Short little update from scalahub. So not much of an update from his side. Been on leave most of the week, and then other than that, been working on the payout contract in Dexy. Where are we? A couple of comments from Morphic on Scala.js dependencies. I think next we have Ilya from Spectrum.
All right, so on the Spectrum network itself, looks like they've finished network controller implementation, writing tests for their networking layer. It's a work in progress. In terms of the core, Ergo Pay version 2, removing the manual entry of the address is a work in progress. Looks like yield farming, they've finished their contract implementation and adding support to the SDK. And in terms of the backend, they've prepared backend for the Cardano public testnet. On the front end, they've updated the swap user interface to show important information like price impact at all times. Looks like the full swap user interface has been redesigned, border radius, border colors, and more. They've added new Fi wallet support to the Cardano side of the DEX. Looks like they've also found and fixed a couple bugs, fixed redirect on redeem page. Now there is a redirect after you redeem all LP tokens so that there is no swap from 0 tokens. Nice.
Yep. Once again, I think Yash has got a hold of the emojis.
Yeah.
Okay, next we have an update on Ergonames from Balb. So it's refactored the contract to make it more secure, updated the backend to separate payment to different address, updated the JavaScript SDK to utilize the GraphQL server. That reduces calls to the Explorer by about half, with another upgrade planned that will reduce them even further. Started to rework the transaction library to utilize Fleet SDK. and is looking to do a private beta test on testnet shortly. Fantastic. A little bit more chatter here about going cross-chain from BlitzTCG with Vinculum and Blitz. Next, we have Swamp Audio with Liquid Phase.
All right. It looks like since the full Laravel refactor is fairly lengthy process, and we need to see some more deliverables within the Ergo ecosystem. He's focused on updating existing front-end frameworks so they can scale to thousands of users. To include Ergo functionality, like our DApp connector, and fully integrate Ergo payment functionality. Before our Buy with Ergo button is required, the payment portal repository from Ethereum. So we needed something custom built. Looks like the Ergo DApp connector for PHP is already made. But since vanilla Laravel uses a slightly different authorization system than Statmic Laravel, our current UI front end requires a bit of reworking to work properly on our current front end. I've been deep diving this issue presently and should have a solution plus deliverable soon. It's great to hear. Looks like on the current front end, they've created a section for labels artists to create events and event flyer landing pages. They've fixed the fiat shopping cart that apparently had a JavaScript issue. Still working on the user dashboard album upload area on the front end. I have all of the stuff defined well in the back end, but we can't let users into the standard admin panel, so we need to create front end for their options and profiles and such. Looks like they're refactoring. They found a bug in Laravel Nautilus authorization controller, which allows a Nautilus authenticated user to access admin functionality in Laravel. Spoke with devs, and apparently it's a simple Boolean value inside our config, which was overlooked. And so we should push a fix later today when they have time. It looks like they're still working on the refactor models and relationships to match existing site collection methods, our models.
Pretty significant update there. Looks like lots going on. Little update here from Wombo about the UTXO Alliance technical leadership. I believe you attended that one. Is there any update you can provide?
Sure, that's why I missed the AMA.
So
yeah, it was a nice meeting that I had with the UTXO Alliance. My recommendation was we start putting together a cookbook for the variety of chains that are there, the signature requirements. Start building basically knowledge database that developers, say an example, Rosenbridge would need to know the signature scheme that different chains support.
Yep.
That you also would benefit from knowing the different heights at which settlement occurs in terms of low probability, medium probability, high probability. And there's just a lot of data collection that's needed in terms of cross-chain collaboration.
Yeah.
So it's a simple place to start.
Yeah. Get all those details together and people don't have to go searching for such information. Definitely see the benefit in that. And that's just to kick things off, I believe.
Yeah. It's, long term, it would be really nice to have, in Ergo, we have kind of like an EIP, which lays like a general framework for how to do something, right? It's kind of like a cookbook or the proper method to create something. It would be nice to have that type of cross-chain standard.
Yeah.
And I think the UTXO Alliance over time can get there. We're not there yet, but
it'd be great to see all that cross collaboration, creating standards across the industry, and ultimately it makes developers' life easier. And then finally, we have an update from a non-real. So they finished the IDO on the auction house. Thanks to everyone who helped. Also have the auction house, so AHT Erg pair has been released on Spectrum. Tests on the testnet are going well. The current auction type is added for backward compatibility. new auction types are being added and tested. The first ever artwork in the collections was tested successfully. More work is needed for traits and filtering both in the UI and the back end. More work on the user profiles currently being completed, including some steps for verification. A simple notification center has been added to the new UI. They're working on a new compatible solution to handle offers, so i.e. putting offers on artworks that not necessarily auctioned. And the past 2 weeks, they've been busy with the auction house, so not a lot of time to share on the Ergo team at this moment, but will keep us updated. I think that sums everything up for this week, mate.
Yeah, that's solid update.
Yeah, some pretty significant ones there. We've seen sort of Alex working on both 5.0 and sort of continuing on with the 4.0 model. You mentioned in the AMA that the activation is going to be in about 40 odd days, so probably early December at this point. It's exciting to see, but yeah, many things going on across the ecosystem as always, and everyone's continuing to build in the bear market.
Yeah, that's how things should be. I definitely think MrStahlfelge brought up a good point with the IPs in terms of community management, and I think that's a discussion we should continue to push.
Yep,
that's ultimately a nice path to, creating a little bit more resilience and decentralization across the ecosystem. So it's a good discussion to have. I welcome it.
Yeah, and I think it kind of just finalizes discussions also. If you jump into some of the ERPs, there's initial discussion, people come to different conclusions and different solutions are being put forward, but then it kind of just stagnates a little bit because there's not sort of much movement after that. But getting all this sort of community engagement and everything moving forward, see a lot of these sort of ideas and solutions, improvements come to light and sort of finalize and get on chain and chucked into the proper repos as they should. So be great to see everyone get involved.
Yeah, long term, that's always a big question in these type of networks, is kind of decentralizing the ability to improve the network. Yeah. Luckily we do have minor governance for major updates, but when you're talking about EIPs, you're usually talking about design patterns, and it's good to have as much feedback and I guess robust and healthy debate there as possible. One thing that I never hope to see in the Ergo ecosystem is where you can't have opposing views in terms of the pros and cons of frameworks, and you can't look at the positives and negatives of a network. I think that kind of open debate discussion ultimately makes things better.
Yeah, most definitely. Often with a lot of different solutions or improvements or things like that, there could be different side effects or different scenarios where things favor a different party and things like that. But ultimately having these robust discussions, people can iron out different things and sort of lessen the impacts on some people. And often these robust discussions do come, they do bring different ideas forward and put things forward. So obviously solutions can be improved and sort of make it a win for all parties involved, or just for an example there.
Yeah, that's always the case where, one person is supporting option 1, another supporting option 2, they fight and they create option 3, right? And, I think as well, it's good to understand trade-offs, because a lot of things in our industry do break down to trade-offs, and it's important to understand what those trade-offs are and what risks are.
Most definitely. Everyone know their assumptions, get everything out there, open discussion. And then obviously if there are trade-offs, a different solution could be sort of put forward and built out around that one. So it's great to see all the community get involved and continue to do so.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, guys. Well, Joe, it's been a pleasure chatting once again. And thank you everyone for tuning into this week's weekly developer update.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
No worries. Take care, everyone.